To divide a polynomial by a polynomial other than a monomial, we use a process known as long division. And this is how we divide numbers by hand. So we look at how many times the divisor goes into the dividend. And the answer that we get is going to be our quotient. Okay, so let's start with how many times 43 goes into 7. Since 7 is a smaller number, we're going to move over another place and see how many times 43 goes into 72. If we're not sure, we can divide, and whatever we get as our whole number is going to be what we put in our quotient. So in this case, we get 1 as our whole number, so I'm going to put that above the 2, which is the end of the place value for that, 72. And so we multiply 1 times 43, and then we subtract, and I'm going to change the color here. Well, let's subtract 43 from 72. That'll be 29. The next thing we do is bring down the next digit. So we find out, we start all over, right? We find out how many times 43 goes into 295, and we can just divide to find that and use the whole number. And that whole number will be 6, so I'll put that above that place. So then we take 6 times 43, which is 258, and then we subtract that from what we have here. And that difference is 37. Then we bring down the next number, and we start all over again. How many times does 43 go into 376? That's 8 whole times, so we'll put the 8 in the quotient here, and multiply 8 times 43, which is 344. Then we subtract that, and we get 32. Now we've run out of numbers to bring down here, right? So that means we can stop. This is our remainder. And we write that as a quotient with the divisor. So we have as our final quotient 168 and 32/43. That's our quotient using long division. So if you noticed, there was a general pattern to the long division process, and that is start with divide to see how many times your divisor goes into your dividend. Multiply the quotient that you just found times your divisor. Subtract from the dividend, and then bring down the next digit, or next place value, or next term for polynomials. What do we do next? You start all over again, and you keep going through this process, right? We did that process over and over until we ran out of places to bring down. So that leaves us with any remainder if we have any. We're going to use that same process for long division here of polynomials. So I definitely recommend the subtract step be in a different color, because that will help us with the signs there. That's the biggest error, is in the subtract step, so be careful. Use a different color if you can. Okay, so let's start with the divide. How many times does 7x go into 28x squared? So 28 divided by 7 is 4, and x squared divided by x is x. So we're going to put that in the quotient above the x terms. Okay. Now let's multiply 4x times each term of the divisor. So 4x times 7x is 28x squared, and 4x times 3 is 12x. Now we're going to subtract, and this is the reason why I didn't put a positive sign here, because I'm going to change any sign in that product to be the opposite when I subtract. And the first term should cancel out to 0. If it doesn't, then we made a mistake in our quotient. And then negative 23 plus negative 12 is negative 35x. Next step, bring down the next term. Start all over again. How many times does 7x go into negative 35x? Let's divide to find out. So negative 35 divided by 7 is negative 5, and actually x divided by x cancels out, leaving just minus 5 for our quotient there. Let's multiply by each term of the divisor. So negative 5 times 7 is negative 35x. Negative times 5 times 3 is negative 15. Now we want to subtract, so I'm going to change those signs from negative to positive. When we subtract, that changes the signs. Cancels out the first term, and actually this cancels out, so there is no remainder. The quotient from this polynomial division is 4x minus 5. Can we check that? Yeah, of course you can check that. If you take 7x plus 3 and you multiply by 4x minus 5, you get your dividend, right? That's going to be 28x squared minus 35x plus 12x minus 15. So when you combine those like terms, that's going to be minus 23x's altogether. So yeah, you can check your quotient to make sure that that is correct if you wanted.